Second encounter. Yo, what's going on? It's someone that's no one, and welcome back to today's report. Today's report is coming from Trypstar off Earwood. When this happened, 2002. The drug used was TMA-2 at a dose of 80 milligrams. The route administration, orally. Gender, male. Weight, 75 kilograms. His prior experience, he's an experienced tripper, with this being his second TMA-2 trip. And the setting, at home. Okay, so today, we're introducing a pretty unique substance with TMA-2, a psychedelic amphetamine, which we actually have done a report a while back on TMA-6, but that report is currently in the works of being remastered. Anything else related we've done will be any form of the DOX series or MDA. Not too long ago, we actually introduced this with a report on the Patreon, where two users in Amsterdam were sure that they got sold MDMA that was actually TMA-2. What started out as a good time turned pretty wonky, tiring, and psychedelic after a while, which today's report varies a bit, but does show that this is a substance that is sort of in its own lane. We'll break down TMA-2 more after the report. I'm sure you'll enjoy this, so without further ado, let's dive right into this. The first time I tried TMA-2, it hadn't left quite that positive of an impression. It appeared to me as a mild, visually uninteresting, and above all, hypnotizing drug. This was an experience at 40 milligrams, about 5 months ago, of which the report can also be found on the net. First of all, I'd like to mention that I have, throughout the years, had my share of heavily intense and entheogenic and introspective journeys. TMA-2 didn't seem to be an overwhelming head trip, so I decided to double the dose to 80 milligrams. At 6:15 p.m., the start, I took 80 milligrams of TMA-2 hydrochloride on a half-empty stomach. The last time I took this substance, it took at least 1.5 hours to climb up to a +1, so I decided to eat a little. Not even a half hour into it, I got the first signs of an amphetamine stimulation, muscle tensions, big eyes and pupils, and an upcoming yawn clench. From this point on, things started to really accelerate. It was climbing up to a +2. My head was really warm and red, and at the same time, I had the shivers. My sense of taste had greatly diminished, so I decided to stop eating. I went upstairs to take a refreshing shower. A big task, I must say, because by now, my visual field seemed to discover all sorts of movement in the shadows, which did make me quite disoriented. The shower was great, but incomparable with, for example, a shower in the afterglow of a mushroom trip. I felt some dissociation of my body, and sensed that things were still climbing fast. I decided to go downstairs and give in. It had passed 7 by now, 45 minutes in, and I was forced to go downstairs, back to front. My knees were nicking from the muscle tension, and I was unable to maintain my balance. I went to the back of the house and rested on a bed upstairs. Visually, things were really getting intense right now. It started with Asian patterns glowing all over the room. The colors of pink and green seemed to be showing up a lot. I've never had the opportunity to experience the effects of 2CX or 2CTX, but I had always imagined the visual alterations to be something like this. Then within half an hour, 1 hour, 15 minutes in, my visual field was completely filled with color, movement, and material objects which were crystallized into barely recognizable shapes, intensely overpowering open-eye visuals as well as closed-eyed visuals. The effects were still climbing. It even began to feel a little toxic. It felt like my liver was dissolving. I knew this pain was mental, and quite quickly I was able to shake it off. I had enough water on me and drank a lot. Especially the muscle tensions contributed to some body load after a while. The train of thought wasn't really one of thought, more of images. It was as if you're floating along sweeping images, fast and abstract, as a beautifully filmed martial arts film, in which the camera rotates along with the players. This made it feel quite passive and superficial. For quite some time, I had the same flood of images, the same spiral, which always ended in chilly, rotten and forgotten places of the world, which was home to starved and sick people. Very cold, very lonely. Apart from the theme of my movies, this is what I imagine the brain movies are like, as they are described in Pickle under MMDA. I wasn't afraid. I didn't panic. But I didn't have the certainty I have, for example, with mushrooms. After 2 hours, the worst is over. I can clearly remember hoping that at 9:15, 3 hours in, the peak would be over. But it wasn't. It was still climbing, but the character of it all started to change slowly. The first 3 hours were really intense. There were moments at which I doubted everything would turn out okay, but I knew these thoughts were relative. I decided a couple times to stand up and walk about the house, to bring my train of thoughts/images on another track. Most of the time, I succeeded in doing that. I took another shower at about 10:15, 4 hours in, and after that, I tried to watch some TV. I really couldn't see anything. Everything was still moving violently, and sounds were distorted, sounded hollow, and were sometimes echoing. But it pulled me back to reality, which made me a little more comfortable at that time. At this point, I let the cat in. How marvelous. My big support in lonely nights. Great. I've been cuddling him intensely for about half an hour, and then I went back upstairs again. By now, it was about 11 o'clock, 4 hours, 45 minutes in. The visual aspect of the experience started to decline by now, and the amphetamine character started to prevail. Yawn clench, muscle tension, and being unable to remain still. I've been twisting and turning for hours. Lights on, lights off. Constantly the same train of images, ending in the cold, lonely depths of the world. Throughout most of the trip, an industrial, meadow-like sound was heard. I was awake till about 4 a.m., 9 hours, 45 minutes in. After that, I dozed off a little till 9:30 a.m. I wrote this about an hour after I woke up. I was tired, which of course isn't surprising after such a short night and so much stimulation. I didn't really experience a hangover, but it took me a day to fully return to baseline. Conclusion. The character of TMA-2 greatly changes at higher doses. The true face of the visual alterations which it induces become apparent, but however, I don't consider it to be a heavy entheogen. I do think it is quite an entertaining substance at this level. Perhaps I would dose a little lower in the future. Okay, so TMA-2 are specifically known as 2,4,5-trimethoxyamphetamine. This is a pretty unique psychedelic amphetamine that was synthesized in 1933 by Victor Bruckner and has seen activity from the likes of Alexander Shulgin a bit later on. Specifically, there is a section in Pikul where he explores the psychoactive effects of it. So this is a substance that has been around for quite some time, but it is still pretty obscure and pretty rare to come by. Part of the reason for this is that it is noted as difficult to make, even more difficult than LSD. Another part is that it is generally regarded as being inconsistent. Experiences will vary, and there can be a good handful of undesirable effects the substance can bring on. But comparably, based off chemical composition and what Shulgin noted, this substance is most closely related to the likes of mescaline, a naturally occurring phenethylamine psychedelic that is often regarded as being stimulating. But even then, the structure of TMA differs significantly from mescaline. But as for the specifics, it most likely is going to last around the same time as LSD. Today's dosage would have been considered very strong, and Trypstar is lucky he isn't one that experienced heavy adverse effects, even though a decent bit of complications are still noted. Many subjective takes of TMA substances often know that this substance can have a bit of a dirty feeling, that something like MDMA, candy flipping, mescaline even, gets the job done a lot better, more consistently. Now because this is an amphetamine, you can expect many of your typical stimulant effects, like general bodily and mental stimulation, increased blood pressure, increased heart rate, dehydration, appetite suppression, strong body load, increased libido, and much more. But of course at the same time, it is a trip. It is actively psychedelic, which many tend to claim that it can be lacking in this regard at times, specifically when it comes to the visuals. Now this report noted no lack of visuals, but keep in mind this was of a very heavy dose. Trypstar does have another report of his first TMA-2 experience where he only did 40 milligrams, which should have been an effective dose, but he noted it was very lackluster. If you guys want to see that report, I can do it, just let me know. But then again, In Peakle, Shogun only did 40 milligrams and noted a fairly favorable psychedelic experience with visuals, an active headspace, and only a few physical discomforts. So with each person, the experience can vary. One of the biggest things that seem to stand out for people is the body load. It can get intense at times and lead to some pretty strong tactile sensations. Specifically, it can be a euphoric empathy to dysphoric with feelings like nausea and mild bodily distress. But speaking of empathy, TMA-2 and other TMA substances sometimes are noted to be somewhat entactogenic, that it can promote a favorable mood for social interactions. Though, like the substance itself, these feelings can vary and can be inconsistent. But outside of that, you most likely will have some kind of trip. Probably not like anyone you've ever had before, but still a trip, just under the influence of a psychedelic amphetamine, which I imagine the toxic feeling mentioned in this report would most likely be brought on by the physical body load due to its stimulating qualities, and with psychedelics, most of your sensations tend to be enhanced. We see similar feelings get reported with DOX substances, especially when the user has been awake for a long period of time. And speaking of toxicity, there really isn't too much information concerning TMA-2 or its usage, but there has been a study done on lab rats highlighting the potential LD50, which is estimated to be around 180 milligrams per kilogram, in mice at least. And if that's the case, it's unlikely anyone would ever die off TMA-2 unless a ridiculous amount was ingested. But with proper dosing, this shouldn't be too much of a concern. Now that doesn't rule out short-term or long-term effects of the substance. There can still be many adverse effects with casual usage, especially considering it is an amphetamine. And as for combinations, I would for the most part treat this as an amphetamine if you are considering, so avoid other stimulants and other substances that will impact the heart. But then again, it may be wise to not combine anything at all. Like I said, there's little information on TMA-2 out there. We can predict that it interacts with serotonin 5-HT receptors, as well as with dopamine and norepinephrine, since it is both psychedelic and a stimulant. But we just don't know for sure if that or more is going on. So we're going to leave it there for today. If you guys did enjoy this report on TMA-2, want to see another TMA substance, want to see another research chemical, anything at all, let me know in the comments below and we'll do that. If you have your own report you want to see, email me, NoOneSubmitReport@gmail.com, or follow the link below. If you want to see exclusive reports every week, follow the Patreon, link below. If you want to get more involved, join the Discord, link below. And if you enjoyed the video, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, follow the socials, share the video. It's been Someone That's Someone, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.